My name is Stacey Mac Donald, and I'm a researcher at the Royal Institute of Southeast Asian and Caribbean Studies. I have a background in social psychology, and I started my PhD here about 4 years, almost 5 years ago. And for my research, I focus on nature conservation efforts on the Caribbean Netherlands. And I look at people's motivation in what stimulates them to protect the environment, or what kind of struggles or barriers they run up against in doing so. And I'm particularly interested in how those motivations are affected by the constitutional changes the islands experienced in 2010. I was born on Curaçao myself. I have parents from Surinamese descent, so I always tell people that I am the typical example of the Dutch colonial history, so to say. I studied in the Netherlands I came here when I was 17. Then I moved back for a while on Curaçao, and then came back once more to the Netherlands to do my PhD. I always had a desire to contribute to changing the world or improving the world. That was always my dream or my gut feeling. And having the opportunity to do this in a scientific manner, but also being directly involved on the islands is very special to me. I always had the ambition to do a PhD, but at the same time I always knew I wanted to do something back for the islands. I think that was something we learned a lot in high school, saying, well, we need you back. The whole phenomena of brain drain was being told to us all the time, like, we need our students back. And that really stuck with me. So I was really happy that I was able to do a PhD, but that also focused on the Caribbean and the Dutch Caribbean specifically. Even though it's not on Curaçao, I mean, the ties are very close, so yeah. So my research started now almost 5 years ago, and I started by looking at nature conservation initiatives. I have a background in environmental psychology, so that is a sub-branch of social psychology, and within that branch we always look at the interaction of people with the environment. And I was particularly interested in the dynamics of the constitutional changes that the islands experienced. And I wanted to know if those changes affected people's motivation to engage in environmental protective actions. So what I really focused on was interviewing people. So I first conducted a lot of interviews, and I also did an online survey, trying to understand people who were already actively protecting the environment, to see what their reasons for doing so were, but also what challenges they ran up against. So that is in a nutshell what I'm looking at. And later I also focused more on the political or the more broader social implications of that as well. So on Bonaire, I first, like I mentioned, I did some interviews and a survey, and later in the research, so the third year, I was approached by the Worldwide Fund of the Netherlands, who's now also actively involved on those islands, so that is one of those interesting developments, who approached me with a question, so if I knew anything about the fishers community. And I didn't, but I was interested in it, also in the realm of environmental protection and the coral reefs of being of importance, especially also on Bonaire. So after some negotiation and talking with them, I ended up doing a research for them on Bonaire with the fishermen. And the main question they asked me was if I could identify the social bottlenecks in terms of fisheries management on Bonaire. So I conducted a lot of interviews with all the relevant stakeholders, and what came to my attention immediately was the absence of the fishers within the entire management process. So I ended up establishing a fisheries cooperative, kind of building on initiatives that were already going on the island, saying, well, if this is necessary, then why not invest my time and energy in establishing this fisheries cooperative? And that ended up being quite a success. The cooperative was established, but still needed a lot of help. So I continued to kind of help them when I left Bonaire, and they are still receiving assistance from the WNF, but also from the government as well. And that was kind of when I got a good taste in being more applied in my research, and I also noticed that I really enjoyed implementing what I knew or what I thought was beneficial for the community as well. So once I noticed that I gained a lot of energy and I really enjoyed doing more of the applied research, being able to implement my findings or my ideas, I decided to start up a consultancy business. I do enjoy academia, but I like the applied aspects of it a bit more. So with a friend of mine who I actually met on St. Eustatius, we decided, well, maybe if we join forces, he's a biologist, that we can execute some nice projects on the islands. And our first big project was on St. Eustatius. And that is a reforestation project with the idea that we want to cultivate native plants and trees, plant them out all over the islands to bring back more greenery, create a cooler climate, combat erosion. So it has a lot of environmental benefits to it, but also community-related benefits in terms of the availability of shade, more social spaces, but also fruits and maybe even vegetables, as it covers a broad range of activities. And for that project, we work closely together with a local NGO, but also the local government. So it's a joint collaboration.